Okay, so Cameroon's like many other parts of Africa. Most of the people live in the dark. There's no electricity. Even in those areas where there is electricity, it's inconsistent. It comes and goes. Kerosene seems to be the way that everyone lights their homes. In the big cities, that's not necessarily true, but in the countryside. So here's the situation with kerosene costs, and this is where we can start comparing with what you know in Haiti. The folks in Cameroon in the village areas, now I'm talking about the real rural folks that are living off the highway, off the road, they're down the trail, they're spending about $1.20 a week on kerosene. In the village centers, where you have commerce going on, more activity and all that, they're spending about $1 a day. So in our model and in looking at power delivery, we were looking to, as you did, as an alternative to kerosene, can we provide light or electricity without adding on more expense to them within the framework of money that they're spending already? Of course, why is kerosene enjoyed, and why some of the challenges we had in introducing LED lights? The culture and the history of kerosene is deeply ingrained. Our early work in introducing the LED lights, which started 7 years ago, one of the big complaints was the color of the light. It was very white. It was very high Kelvin. It was, we're looking at 5,000 degree Kelvin lights, whereas kerosene is very much the same as a fireplace. Of course, kerosene they can buy easily in the community. They can get it from a neighbor. If they run out, they can buy it by the spoonful. They don't have to commit to a certain quantity to match their available cash. In our project, Torchbearers is working with a couple of folks. Ludwig and Jude are the two principals that we're working with. Ludwig is a Canadian NGO. He has an organization called Wireless Light and Power, and he is the intellectual side from the outside of Africa, working with Jude, who has created these commercial operation, very similar to your Haiti operation, called Reliable Energy Innovators. They've been testing their product, trial and error, learning curve, all that for 7 years to get it going. They are the first organization formally recognized by the Ministry of Water and Energy, which was really very significant. That's helped in terms of avoiding some duties on import, similar to what you're doing, but it also allowed them to avoid value-added tax on several aspects of the operation. And what they found over time that it's not a technical challenge, it's a cultural one when it comes to introducing electricity, light, power, all those things. We started with the battery packs and we've evolved to the microgrids. And I'm running through this, but we don't have much time. Historically, Cameroon law only allowed non-grid distributed commercial power options, which forced us into the battery situation with batteries and the lights. Our original lights was designed to run for about 4 hours, and here you see the light stick that they came up with, very similar to what I saw on the table here. At that time, they cost about $20 a piece, and we were expecting them to last about 5 years. Unfortunately, the way they were handling them, using them, they didn't last even a year. And one of the great technical innovations that I've heard on yours was the fact that you have the software, the hardware in there to make sure they only last for, you're only using 50% of the battery. We didn't have that. So they would just use the light to depletion, they would turn it off, leave it off for 15 minutes, then they would discover they could turn it on again, it would come back on for a little while longer, then turn it off, go off, and they would just thoroughly discharge the battery. Why didn't they work? Kerosene was convenient. They didn't know about how batteries worked. We had challenges in how we were pricing it. Pay-per-use, pay-per-recharge. We didn't follow your model. That, again, we're learning what you've done to overcome some of these unrealistic customer expectations. They thought they were going to provide the same kind of light that they were going to get in the big city. And then just the whole early on initial, how they were being funded, the capitalization, how we were trying to do the inherent amortization of the upfront costs was very inefficient and didn't work. So in 2010, Cameroon law changed, and it said, great, you can start putting in your own privatized power systems, you can put in microgrids. And as a result, there are two aspects that REI has pursued and that we're working with them on. One is charging stations and the other is mini-grids.
REI
is Reliable Energy Innovators. They're the commercial operation for the application and the distribution of the power solution.
Okay.
Here's an example of one of our solar charging stations. This is a prefabbed building that is brought in. The only thing that has to be done locally is the concrete pad, and then this all fits in the back end of one truck and can be delivered to the location. This provides a central site basically for recharging cell phones and other rechargeable devices. It's also what we call a documentation center. Each location will have basically a laptop and a multi-function printer, scanner device, and some of them also have the smaller photo printers that can print passport photos. That's about it. They're charging effectively 50 cents to recharge a cell phone, and they're doing on average about 1,000 phones a week. This is an alternative to everyone putting their cell phones into a basket, someone getting on a motorcycle, driving the motorcycle 2 or 3 hours to the town that has hopefully has electricity, and charging everyone's phone up for that week and then bringing it back. So at 50 cents a recharge, it's much less expensive than the time and the energy cost, the fuel cost and all that for people to group recharge on some trip. This is what they look like on the inside. Is that charging station. It's a bunch of power bars, and a whole bunch of cell phones that are being recharged at one time. The upper left corner, those are the batteries that were being recharged for the LED lights. And again, it's very simple inverter. Again, we're only talking about a few hundred watts here at this station. And there are two kinds of village microgrids. One is a light-only system. This is 12 volts. We've been talking about going to 24 volts, and I think there may be some attraction to that. A light-only system, it's 12 volts, it's basically only providing lights. Each customer can sign up between 1 and 4 light bulbs in their home. There's no metering. It's fused, so they don't add on a bulb or two. Each system can handle somewhere between 100 to 300 bulbs. We try to keep the grid within a 250 meter radius. We could go out as much as 500, but we really try to keep it at 250. There is the option of doing home recharging, where we supply the small transformer that goes from 12 volts to the 3.6 or whatever it is the cell phone would need. But really the exciting part is what we're calling what we call the full power system. And that's a 220 50 cycle, and our test model was done in Sabongere. It's a 3 kilowatt generating station. There's two big solar panels. It's in operation for a year. In addition to distributing power to the community, it also has cell phone recharging and documentation services. And in this application, there's a total of 500 meters of grid wire. Right now, we're providing power to 13 metered customers. Each metered customer has, on average, 4 people using power from that meter. So we're getting to about 312 impacted people right now with this system. And here are our rates. If you just want light, you don't want full power, we're charging $1.60 a month. That's for 2 bulbs. And it's scaled up as you use more electricity. You sign up for a certain level, a certain quantity that you're going to draw each hour. And if you want more, you pay more. It's a tiered approach where it gets more expensive the more you use. And we found this is fine. People will do that. Because what we're finding is that this is a home user. This ends up being a commercial user. So they have income to offset this higher rate per kilowatt. Now, in comparison, Sunel, the big provider, they sell their electricity at only 50 francs per kilowatt hour, and that's because it's very heavily subsidized. In addition to that, we have a water filtration system, which I'll show you some pictures. So here is our little station that we have in Sabangare, and you can see some pictures of our where the grid power, the solar power comes in, our battery bank, and all of our voltage controllers and inverters and all in a very small compact area. These are truck batteries. We found out that the really wonderful deep discharge gel type batteries just do not have the longevity. And so we went and swapped those out after they started failing. And with your basic truck batteries, they can withstand the high temperatures, and we've had no problems with them. We're expecting them to last several years. Here's the interior. Again, cell phone recharging is a big aspect for income, as well as the cell of the power. And this is our grid distribution. Pretty simple. They are insulated. We have 2 wires going down each side of the street. This is where we're largely serving the shopkeepers along here. They're also behind these shops, there are homes that are on the grid. You can comment about the...
I can make it work.
Yeah. But we also have in the city, this is an LED lamp. This is in the city center, right at the crossroads. 1 street light is provided. That's free of charge to the community. It's a source of pride.
It's really long people got in
And the stores will stay open later in the evening because they now have light. They don't have to burn the kerosene. They don't have to run the generators. This is our
How big is the system? You said it's about 3 kilowatts?
3 kilowatts. 3 kilowatts. And this is the water filtration system that we have, where we do a sedimentation, a charcoal filtration, and UV filtration as well. And there's a spigot right outside the station, and anyone can come free of charge and fill up their basically drinking water bottles. And that's Jude, our colleague. Now, those are the pictures. I'm zipping through here, and I have prepared an outline of kind of like, where do we go from here? Here, I'll just pass these around. Matter of fact, I'm going to need one of those myself.
You can take mine.
Everybody get one?
Everybody have one? I can give you mine.
Okay.
So, we developed this scalable opportunity based on a 10 kilowatt system that would provide 220 power year-round. A 10 kilowatt system could provide power basically up to either 100 homes or 12 high-demand micro-businesses. And in thinking of that, we kind of look at a combination. We say, okay, if it's a 10 kilowatt system that's going through a village city center, a village community, it's going to provide good power for around 50 homes and 6 micro-businesses. Now here we're looking to supply as much as 800 watts to a micro-business. The 300 watt max that we're doing in Sabangare, we're finding the small businesses really want more. They want to run refrigerators. They want to do more power-heavy things in the stores. But it could be scaled in some other way. We could say, okay, you could have a 300, a 500, an 800 watt level of per hour use. But with a 10 kilowatt system, we think we can impact somewhere around 1,200 people. That 10 kilowatt system is going to cost in US dollars about 90 grand. It includes everything, including the installation and the training. That's what you're going to need to spend before you open your doors, before you're supplying power the first day. So the solar panels, the batteries, the grid distribution, the installation of that, and it even includes the land for the solar array. We've discovered that we can amortize or pay back that investment within 3 years. Which is a very quick for a power system, I think. It's just wonderful. Our weekly operation and overhead is, including maintenance, is something on the order, is on page 2 now, on the order of $60 a week. And so our total cost in those first 3 years on a weekly basis, fully amortizing all the upfront capital costs, is about $637 a week. On the revenue side, if we're pricing just at the 1100 CFA or $2.20 per kilowatt, and of course remember, if we're tiering it, we can actually get more money, but looking at very conservatively, where we're supplying about 48 kilowatts to the community, our revenue comes in on a weekly basis at $745. So there's about $100 a week net in this plan, 14%. And we're paying back for the whole system within 3 years. So this is a really, I don't say lucrative, but it's, as you can see, the upfront capital costs are paid for at the end of 3 years, with your operating costs only around $60 a week, and your revenue coming in around $700 a week. You have a lot of cash left over. Our plan is to use that cash, as Dr. Nebo explains, and that is to expand the project. 50% of it would go back into project funds to do more of these in other communities. There's also revenue derived from the ancillary in Sabang, where we're doing cell phone charging. We're only charging 100 CFA francs, or 20 cents, to charge a phone. It's kind of a promotional thing, it's kind of a good community thing, rather than the 250 or the 50 cents that they're charging at the standalone charging stations. So just from the ancillary income, documentation services and all that, they're getting about 15 grand a year on top of the power sale. So if we wanted to serve a million people, each kilowatt is reaching about 120 people, and therefore we would need 834 of the 10 kilowatt systems to impact the lives of 1 million people. Well, we're not suggesting you put in 834 10 kilowatt systems, we're suggesting you put in larger systems than that. In the last 10 minutes, I'm going to tell you about a unique situation in Cameroon. The Cameroon government, several years ago, when the law changed, decided to bring themselves, the national government, bring power to the people. They went out and in 7,000 communities across the nation of Cameroon, they delivered 60 kilowatt diesel generators and had Sonel, the national power company, put in microgrids in 7,000 communities. There's a grid, there's a diesel generator. Those grids supply, potentially, could supply as many as 800 users, somewhere between 500 and 1,000 users at each grid location. Now they only connected 50, 60, 70, 80 actual homes or businesses or the government offices to that grid. The grid is there, but in connections to individual homes, 50 to 60, 70 are actually hooked up. They supplied 2,000 liters of fuel, and those communities then ran the generators, supplied power. The original plan was for the power to be supplied just in the evenings, from 6 in the evening until 10 p.m. at night. And the thought was that that diesel power would last about, that diesel fuel would last about 6 months at the consumption rate that the diesel generator has. The elections were going on in 2011, and the President for Life, Paul Biya, made sure that all of the tanks were full before the elections, and made sure that all the communities were lit up. We've heard this story before. And the the government district officer said, well, we're going to provide power 24 hours a day. And so for about 2 months, right up until the elections happened, these 7,000 communities had beautiful power. When the fuel ran out, that was it. And right now, as best as we can tell from our surveys, when I was there just a couple of months ago, only about 10 of these still had fuel running, and only about 5 of them had any plans for refueling their tanks.
This is an example of what I was talking about. You have government coming, tell the people we're going to do stuff for you, so the people are standing there folding their hands and they're saying, well, government, give us light. Go ahead.
Now, the government has turned over. The government doesn't want to have anything to do with these systems anymore, because they don't want to be blamed for if there's no fuel. So they've turned over all these microgrids to the city council, to the mayor or the city council, whatever government, small governmental group there is in each of these communities. So you own it. You can own it. You can operate it. You go out and buy the fuel. You charge your own people. There you go.
And this is very common in Cameroon. The same thing happens even with schools, with education, or with hospitals. When the people complain that they need a school, what government will do is come in and put up the building. That's the central government. They'll put up the building and disappear and say, your local community supply the teachers. But it's a whole lot easier to put up the building than to supply the teachers. And so you have, in these different places in Cameroon, you have these buildings, quote unquote, the schools, but there's really not much education going on. The same thing happens in hospitals. The people say, we don't have a hospital, and the government says, okay, we're going to take care of you. So they come in, they put on a building, and then they don't send nurses, they don't send doctors.
So we have this situation. There's one community that we're working with in a community called Ako. Now we have torches in existence, as Dr. Nebos described, in several of these communities that are basically praying for power in their community. So we have a community base, a relationship base already established. We have relationships with the powers that be in each of these communities. And there's really, the powers that be in each community in the villages in Cameroon is you'll have the city council, a group of people that are empowered to do things to improve the city. You'll have the district officer, which is the national government representative. And then you'll have the Fawn, who is the historic tribal leader of that village or that area. And if you want to do anything like this, you need to have good relationships with all 3 of those people. The district officer can stop something from happening. The Fawn can encourage something to happen, allow it to happen. And the city council just wants to make sure that it's happening right and that it's going to be an improvement overall. We have that in the city of Ako. I think it's just an incredible opportunity to. We've done the survey in this particular city. There's the grid covers 700 homes. 80 of them are actually connected, and we could go in and bring in a solar-powered generating system and install it. And since we don't have the cost of the grid installation, which is labor-intensive, and all that copper wire, I don't know if it's copper or aluminum, but it's already up.
Are they stolen much?
No. Because there's not a ready market for it.
Yeah, I want to say one more thing about ACO. One of the things that we're doing as we talk about farm schools to go from place to place is that we're telling people we're not going to come in and buy land. We want you, the local people, to donate land as an initial indication of your buy-in into the project. You're claiming ownership by donating the land. ACO is one of the places where they have given us land that we think is about 2,500 acres of land for our farm school. And so it's a place with significant promise.
So this back page, if we were to go in we put in a full 60 kilowatt system to provide from solar energy the same as the diesel generator and operate it, this is what we see would happen. You know, it costs about $500,000, it would reach about 4,800 people. It would be amortized over 3 years. And there would be a big return on investment, especially from the 4th year on. And this could be duplicated very easily, relatively speaking, across the nation.
Comparing page 3 and 4, the grid that was put in OPCO is for 700 homes, 80 of which are connected.
Right.
And on the back, that 60 kilowatt system is for 4,800 people.
Did I do some more math wrong?
Well, I just don't know how you go from 700 homes, 80 of which are connected, to 4,800.
Homes versus people is one issue.
4,800 people.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
All right, but I mean, unless these are really big homes, how do you go from 80 to 700 homes to 4,800? 7 people per home?
6 is what I was using. 4,800.
So 4,200?
4,200? All
Okay,
right.
I may have made a...
And so is your back page including the cost of connecting the people to that grid, or is that a minimal cost?
Well, the grid's already there. Yeah, it includes everything. It includes the meters that would be needed, because right now there are only meters on the homes.
So the connection's not an issue, because the grid is there.
Yeah. I mean, running wires from the overhead lines down to the homes would need to be done.
Is this a centralized 60 kilowatts, or is it distributed?
What do you mean by that?
Well,
Centralized.
is it
Centralized.
all in one place?
Yes.
In a village?
Yes.
Everything pans out from there.
Yes.
So the maximum distance is, you said 500 meters or something?
Right, that's what we're trying to stay within.
Right, so this is like a kilometer.
A kilometer in either direction. Yeah, in either direction, radius. It tends to be linear because all the shops and the homes tend to be along the road.
Yeah.
So you run one power line, 500 meters this way and 500 meters that way from the solar array.
It's your 2-minute warning.
Okay.
Of course, we can discuss longer.
So the revenue number, you've got average daily consumption of 48,384 watts, is that watt hour?
Yes, that is watt hours, right? That would be.
Yeah, so I have a question along the same lines.
Can I actually?
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, finish.
So you're, I guess that's just on the math, so that's 48 kilowatt hours on a 10 kilowatt system, right?
Right.
So you're running about, you were expecting about 4.85 hours a day. So it gets captured in
Yeah.
So, my question, and I just looked at the first page here of your existing system. Since you're charging people by watt, but you're actually delivering energy, if these 100 people with 100 watt connections wanted to continuously use 100 watts throughout the day, you wouldn't have enough energy coming into the sun.
Okay. Well, somehow it works. I'm not the technical guy on this.
Okay.
All right. So.
Because they don't turn on the light during the day.
Right.
So it works so long as nobody gets wise to the idea that they can run 100 watts continuously. So if they only use it when they need it, it pencils out.
Yeah.
But if income increases and people decide they want to have refrigerators, things like that,
Of course, yeah.
they never pass that 100 watts threshold, and then you might run into issues where you said 100 watts a day, 100 watts continuous, and I'm using less than that, but you're not getting enough input from the solar. So I understand why you'd want to have a watt hour meter to try to measure the energy and want to do it by power, but it does leave it open to that possibility. So it is somewhat misleading.
Yeah, right now the system in Sabangare, how it's being used between the daytime demand and nighttime demand, right, it pencils out.
But if load increases, each shop becomes more prosperous and
Right.
tries to expand their
Right.
enterprise.
Yeah.
That was actually, we had that issue in Afghanistan, actually with the microgrids, because you
Yeah.
install a certain capacity of solar, run-of-the-river hydro, and initially you had low power consumption per home, and it worked, and then people figured it out, and they're like,
Yeah.
if I'm the first guy to plug in my TV, I got to run my TV, and somebody else didn't get to run their refrigerator.
Yeah, so, yeah, the distinction between power and energy, I think, is important. And I'm just curious, at a 220 volt distribution system, and it's going to be linear, so somebody at the very end will there'll be a voltage drop associated with it. I suppose you can get over that by having big conductors, but I'm curious, I mean, this would be one thing where I'd like to, if I were to invest, I'd want to see, okay, how are you handling that voltage drop?
Right, and this is
Maybe
where
it's
we could
pretty-
use some help from you guys, from
Okay.
the IEEE.
Okay.
You know? Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, we'd love
Yeah.
that, then.
Definitely.
This is an interesting.
This is collaborative, you know, this is what we've done with our 3 kilowatt,
Mhm.
did a lot of trial and error and burned out this and diffuse that.
But that's why you've got that confined radius, right, to minimize that voltage drop.
Right.
But you're gonna have some, but, you know, because he knows these numbers.
It all depends on the conductor size. Big enough conductor, no
Well,
problem.
Sunel, I don't know what the conductor is, but Sunel, when they put in their grid, they put in something that they would have put in for their main line to supply. I mean, it looks
Yeah.
like the really nice, you know, beautiful telephone poles with great wires on it. I mean,
Yeah,
as I see everywhere else.
I've seen some tremendous voltage fluctuations in
Yeah.
some places, however, but that's more probably on the generation side.
Is that professionally done system, is that like a contribution to what you're doing? Somebody
No,
else?
the government mandated that these 7,000 villages be lit. And they contracted with Sunel to come in and provide a 60 kW village system.
So that is the electric energy company.
So that's their offer.
And it's, the government's paid for it, and now the government's just turning it over to the village.
That's, that's a major cost.
Yes,
That distribution is as much as your generator station generator.
yes. And that's what makes this all the more attractive, because it's not only a free, it's a handout on this system, it's also time-wise and resources. Bringing all those poles in, having all those professionals come in and install it.
Material cost and the labor that goes into that is the dominant cost of that
Yeah.
system.
Yeah, and that's what makes this opportunity wonderful, and that's why we're really eager to find a way to go and basically do a test.
Take advantage of that.
Bring in, you know, do the survey, do the research that you're talking about, let's see what the line sizes are, let's see what the distances are, you know, drop, you know, see if what Sunel put in has the utility that we think it has, and bring in a solar array, and do a test unit that then we can then say, okay, there's another 6,999 of these out there. And some of the tests is also going to have to do with how we introduce it to the community. The community has already had a taste of electricity. You know, they had a taste of electricity free. Now we're coming in and we're going to say we're going to charge you for it. You know, so there's going to be a whole indoctrination, and this is where our torches and the torchbearer impact, and where we're already doing good things in the community, can help indoctrinate and guide that process long before anybody shows up with any solar panels. We can lay the groundwork, the cultural groundwork.
So I might have missed this, so the 90K installed cost, that does not include the distribution system.
Does not conclude
Does it include the distribution
No,
system
no,
cost?
it's all there.
No,
Okay.
no.
That's what I was just.
But it includes the additional wires and the meters and, you know, those other components.
So are the end user actually metered, or is this a fused?
They're metered.
You have capability for measuring kilowatt hours now?
Yeah.
Just that you're not, suddenly rate that way.
Well, our rate's based
The
on.
rate is the 225 per kilowatt, it's actually 220 per kilowatt hour.
Right.
I think is the rate.
Oh, it's not,
It's not-
it's not watt, so they are.
Yes.
Is that how that was?
That's just an engineering issue, engineers and.
Oh, okay.
and non-engineers.
No, we're charging by quantity of energy they use.
I see.
But the
Per-
rate goes
per-
up, the
per
rate
watt
goes
hour.
up based
So
on
does the-
how much you can
So-
draw at any given
Does the meter automatically turn off after 100 watt hours, or?
So the 10 kilowatt system, is that, do you actually have meters in the 10
Yes.
kilowatt system?
Yes. And the 3 kilowatt system, yeah, we have meters on it. It's fused so they can only draw a certain,
It's capacity constraint.
right, it's
capacity
fused so that if you sign up for
Okay,
yeah,
I
a 100 watt hour tier, we
I get
fuse
it.
it.
Yeah, okay.
So, this is a diesel generator, so it's all set up, all the centralized distribution you need is in that one place, so you have to plug in basically right there.
Yes,
Solar.
yeah, that's what we'd like to do. Now we have to go out and survey all the communities and see if adjacent to the diesel generator, there's land available to put the array in. The array may end up being some distance from that diesel generator point. And that's a case-by-case basis.
So you haven't seen any examples, you really don't know.
Well, in Sabonga Ray, there's plenty of land right next to the diesel generator. Yeah, that's not a question there, in this particular instance. And the diesel generator actually factors into the whole equation on this expansion program. We would actually use the diesel, have the diesel generator there for peak demand when there's holidays or other things that are gonna cause, we would use the diesel generator basically to replenish the batteries and run it. Because when the demand is that high, you're generating sufficient revenue to pay for the diesel fuel. The add-on cost of running the diesel generator is paid for by the additional demand that's coming on. So if you don't have enough in your battery bank, then you can run the diesel generator.
So you've got a huge battery bank. It's got to handle like a day's supply.
No, well,
How many batteries do you have?
let's go back to the picture. We can count the picture of how many batteries we have in the,
Well, 60 kilowatt.
can you go back to,
60 kilowatts.
60 kilowatt,
That's
that's
just the
the
solar
your
system.
system, which is 1.5 kilowatts. So
Right,
it's
but
like
for the
40
solar
times
system, they need a
more.
big for that.
160 batteries.
Yeah, that just for
Yeah.
temporary,
160 of those are batteries, they're using truck batteries, which are
Yeah.
quarters.
just enough to stabilize
Like
the
200 amp hour
Yes, truck
batteries.
batteries, it might be 4 times as
Yeah.
much. Ours are 200 amp
Running at
hours.
night.
yeah, that'd be a lot of batteries.
Obviously running on that.
That could be 1,000.
So
That would be,
that's a pretty big
what do we
load.
say,
Kiloamp hour?
140 times 4, say.
Well, okay, yeah, you're only gonna, generally speaking, people are used at present. I know how the demand grows as people get used to it, but at present, you're talking about that window of time between 6 p.m. and 10 p.m. And then in the morning, say between 5 a.m. and 6 a.m., when folks are gonna want that current from the batteries. During the day, your solar array could be scaled so that you could supply your daytime demand plus recharge batteries.
How long has this system been running?
How long is,
This microgrid been running?
this has been running a year, we just finished our first year.
How'd you
That's
do
the
in the,
three?
That's a 3 kilowatt system.
how'd you do in the rainy season?
Just
Customers
fine.
still pretty
Yeah.
good?
Yeah, just fine. Yeah, because they took all of that into consideration.
Right.
Because they've been doing this with the solar charging stations, which some of them have been up for a couple of years now. They have a lot of experience, and, you know, it's like those, the solar panels are manually steered so that we're oriented towards the sun throughout the day, because it's just less expensive to have your,
Trackers.
yeah, just go out there and turn it. Yeah, every
Yeah,
hour or
that's
so,
good.
crank it around a little bit, you know?
The system with the diesel generators, the economics don't pencil out just use the diesel generator.
Yeah. And the logistics of getting the fuel there
Yeah, I can see the logistics being a problem.
is a real thing. So if you can refuel that tank once a year or twice a year, you know, put some
It might work
stabilizer
out.
in there, yeah, then it'll work out.
Yeah.
But if you had to refill that tank every month or every couple of months, well,
Sound like a great opportunity.
I think it's just, someone is gonna figure this out and take advantage of it.
So 7,000 villages, so is, what's the calculation of the number of people, total number of people, 7,000 villages?
Well, if you were to take the 7,000 villages and multiply it out by the number of kilowatt hours and how many people we get to, we would get to 33 million people if you were to do all 7,000 of them. Now, that doesn't, okay.
Sounds good.
You get, well, okay, if you're gonna get to 120 people per kilowatt, and times 60 kilowatts.
What's the
times
population over
6,000.
there?
Yeah,
There's an extra zero there, actually.
okay. So it's-
120 people per kilowatt,
Right,
under 60 kilowatt plant.
right, so
Okay,
multiply that out.
well, that's 7,000 people.
Okay, times 7,000
That's not
installations.
a lot.
Yeah.
Do you want to take a quick break with the coffee?
Yeah.
You know,